Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el Jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
At the Musial with Alan and Daniel, we'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shoptaw at C70. Alan Medlock still getting the game started. I forgot to check in on Alan and seeing how the Tulsa Hell season is going. I imagine it has gotten started. But we will try to get an update for next week. But joining us this week, continuing our great run of guests, is Scott Plaza. Scott has making his Musial debut, aren't you, Scott?
Absolutely. And you're saying continuing this run of guests, and you go, oh, Brian, Walton, Bernie, and then here's Scott. So I apologize for those that were riding that momentum going into March, but here I am. Sorry about it. But he must have really gone down the list to end up on me, but I'm happy to be here.
I'm expecting you to bring the audience. I mean, as many podcasts and everything that you're involved with, I figure this is a ratings boost all the way around. So, but for those that haven't listened to you, haven't followed you, maybe don't know a lot about you, why don't you kind of lay out a little bit of your background, because you've got a fairly interesting one for the fact that you're now blogging and podcasting.
Yeah, interesting is a good way to put it. It's been pretty much a zigzag to pretty much everything here in my life. So I've started doing this podcasting, blogger, whatever you want to call this type of Cardinals media. So now it's been about a year, starting with Redbird Rants over there, where I'm still over there pretty much daily. I started doing that after I currently coach high school softball.
Okay.
And I am in the camp where high school sports are kind of going down the wayside a little bit with club sports and things going on. And thinking about back to my playing days, I loved reading about myself, not to sound selfish, but I just thought it was really cool to see like yourself in the local paper and stuff. So I actually started building a website around our softball team and challenging myself to do kind of game day blogs and things like that. And that's what really got my passion to get back into this sports thing that I find myself talking about anyway. So I might as well put it out there for other people to see and argue with, instead of just having to call my brother, who I usually talk about with this. But going all into it, I'm currently a teacher, but building into that, I played professional baseball in the indie circuit for 4 seasons after playing Division III at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, where we won the Division III national championship in the same season that our football and basketball team also won, which according to Chicago Sun-Times was like 1 in 78 million chance to happen. So if I would have known that and just totally foregone the NCAA bylaws, definitely would be hearing me in different ways. But then that took me to going through the indie ball circuit, where, holy cow, talk about another world. But now here I am.
Yeah, I mean, again, very few people that have been on this show in the lifetime span of it have a baseball reference page, and you do have that. And it does show your college and your independent ball thing. So if anybody's interested, you can look up and see how you go. That I mean, I know you put in your bio, but that's got to be a kind of a cool thing.
I was actually just talking to my wife about it the other day. Just being able to like do something like that and see that it's the same place that you can find stats for people like Albert Pujols. You can pull up my really, really below average just baseball career, which now my students are also finding and seeing my old player photos and using those in their presentations and stuff in class. But now it's getting to the point where they've also found the lore of my last spring training in Indy Ball. I got released when the Cleburne Railroaders signed Rafael Palmeiro at the age of 57. So I was called into the office and told that Palmeiro would sell more tickets than you will. And I really had no argument with that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was kind of the point where I'm like, okay, maybe I'm at the end of the road here. Add on to the shoulder and elbow surgeries. And I think I'm where I'm supposed to be now at this point.
I mean, but I do remember when Palmeiro signed because I mean, of course, once the steroid stuff came out, you know, he was the guy that was on the Hall of Fame track until all of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, you're right. You couldn't argue with it. People could come see it, but just to have that little bit of connection to baseball history, I think about there's a guy here in town. He never made it out of Double A, and he's well out of baseball. But he was one of the people that the Cardinals received in the Tino Martinez trade, and so I think that just having those little nuggets and little bits of history that tie around you is pretty cool.
Well, if I could share one more bit of nuggets
Sure.
before we get into like the actual things that people want to hear, talking about the baseball history. When I was playing in Sonoma, California, for the Stompers, this was the same time that Kelsey Whitmore, who I'm sure you've possibly seen in the Savannah Bananas and the women's
Mhm.
baseball world, and Stacy Piagno were playing for the Stompers at that time. And Stacy ended up pitching a 7 inning game and got a win. And she was the first female to get a win in a professional game in something like 50 years. And she was using my glove that game.
Ooh.
So I also have an interesting piece of that history. She's got a spot in the Hall of Fame, and I'm trying to see if they want that glove. But it's also signed by her and me, so I'm not sure if that brings the value up or if they're like, you know what, just hang on to it. But it'd be a
Yeah.
cool way to be in the Hall of Fame.
It would be. I mean, again, whatever avenue you can do to get there, that counts. So that would be pretty neat. So yeah, you've gotten into writing and podcasting. What you're writing Redbird Rants.
Mhm.
You've got Redbird Rundown and Cardinals on My Mind. Am I missing anything? Because it seems like you've got a lot of stuff going on your plate.
Yeah, I'm also writing every Sunday for Viva Alberto's, and you could
Hmm.
probably find me most of the weeks on those podcasts as well with Jake Wood and Gabe Simons. And then over at Redbird Rundown, that's kind of where I'm more consistent. We have actually just kind of blown up into. We are actually going to have Kareem from Dealing the Cards on this
Hmm.
weekend, and we are also releasing. You guys get to hear for the first time a Patreon where we're going to have some exclusive and extended stuff over there. I'm working with a couple of guys in the organization to have some interviews and stuff with, but we're looking to build that up. And then if you follow us already, you would have seen our random Cardinal of the Week segment,
Hmm.
which my brother actually is involved with. And today's segment was around the 1982 Cardinals, so it was a really fun look back to then. But yeah, pretty much if you search STL Cards anywhere on Twitter, you'll find me tagged somewhere.
That is a good thing. And if y'all are starting Patreon, I know Talking About Birds has a Patreon. I thought about it, but apparently all the money is gone now. So for y'all folks, I'm not gonna even try to compete with all that. So here we are. Here we are a week into games of spring training for the most part. And absolutely nothing we have learned, of course, because it is the beginning of spring training. And I don't want to get into too many, oh wow, this, we're going to talk about one appearance and now this guy's a Hall of Fame or anything like that. But is there anything that has caught your eye out of this first week or so of spring?
Well, you kind of took a lot of my talking point away because I said this is the part where you get to pick and choose the story that fits whatever you want to talk about. So if that is talking about how you have the best preseason bet in JJ Weatherhold's Rookie of the Year, and then he hit that home run today, well then let's talk about how much and how important it is that we hit spring training home runs. But
Very
then
important.
let's also make sure that we don't talk about somebody like Tink losing a few miles per hour on his fastball, but then also talk about how our boy Richie Fitz was touching 98. So that's what I love about spring training is that you can pick and choose whatever you want to talk about. Wow, look at these home runs, look at the velocity in a good or bad way. But then at the end of the day, I think the Cardinals won the league last year in spring training. and
They did
that's
in
kind of
23 for sure,
okay in
and
23.
yeah,
And either way, it didn't end up how
no,
how we wanted it to. But
no.
I'm most interested in seeing how guys are used. I do think that's something that we can actually take out of spring training, and I think Thomas DeJC is one guy that is really going to be interesting to see. We saw him in center field today. He's going to go to play in the World Baseball Classic with Team Italy, and he's going to play shortstop. And I think he's going to have to turn into a utility player, and I think the Cardinals want him to. So that's the type of storyline that I like to see, and I can actually buy into when you see the guys with different gloves and they're actually doing that in game action.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think usage patterns can be important, especially later on. I mean, obviously, a position change like the JC's is big, no matter. Um, but if you start seeing certain relievers coming in the seventh or eighth or something, or on the flip side of that, in the third or fourth or fifth, to make sure that they're facing major league hitters instead
Mhm,
of the back of the bench, which you might be in the eighth or ninth. You might be able to start drawing some stuff from there. I don't know that we've gotten to that point yet,
mhm.
but having a JC, I think the signing of Ramon Urias has thrown quite a wrinkle into both JC and Jose Fermin, and for them to be able to add a skill like that is huge. I mean, one, because the Cardinals don't necessarily have a guy like that with Brendan Donovan gone, but two, that's the only way you're going to get to stay on the roster.
Well, and we thought Brian Ramos was a threat to Sajasi first, and then very quickly he was cast aside for the Zach Kent again, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, but absolutely, and that's where something the usage pattern is like the way that you put it is going to make a lot of sense. And I, I don't know. I the guy like Sajasi, when now you have Urias, I think he's going to actually be at the time. I was like, okay, they've signed Urias. Okay, he's this other guy. But then you find out it's a major league deal, and you're like, oh wow, okay, so they're actually in on this. And he's got that kind of utility pattern that now Sajasi is going to have that direct competition with that maybe wasn't there until that signing.
Yeah, and again, I think about Jose Fermin had a pretty good year last year, right? I
Hmm.
mean, especially in Memphis, but even when he was in the major leagues, he did fine. He has no options, so JC does. Um, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't. I haven't really sat down again and put pencil to paper. I've done it a couple times this year on the Substack. I haven't written one lately, but it seems very difficult for me to figure out how both of those guys could be on the roster with the signing of Urias.
No, I absolutely agree, and I think they both had an outside chance without Urias, even
Mhm.
kind of both being up there, because I do think the Cardinals have enough confidence in either one of their futures of a major league Swiss Army knife of some sort, that one would probably play that role in Memphis, while the other one would play that role up in St. Louis. And now there's the potential that Sajasi might get pushed, depending on how the bat plays, or Fermin gets pushed to now could they both be in Memphis as they sort through position battles down there then at the AAA level.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you can't completely rule out, although I wouldn't be very surprised. The Urus is not a whole lot of money, right? I mean, if
Mhm,
he came in and just had a terrible spring, or the other two guys just lit it up, I mean, it's not completely unheard of for them to then say, "Okay, we're going to let you go," and eat that million or two or whatever it was. Um, I don't expect that. I think if they even thought that was the case, they would have probably tried for a minor league deal.
mhm,
Um, but I mean, until I think about Justin Brule, as another guy that they've come in and kind of signed for some or brought in with some money.
mhm.
Those kind of guys, if they're not prohibitively expensive, especially for a front office that wants to be aggressive, the money doesn't have to be an issue.
Well, and that's where you hear the Rule 5 with Pushard is like, "Oh, we gotta
Hmm.
make sure that you hold on to him." It's like, you really I mean, kind of, but you really don't have to. What do you offer him back for X thousand amount of dollars? Like,
Yeah,
what does
half
that really
half the half
matter?
the price what it was. I think it's 50 to buy and 25 to get back. Something like that.
Right, so something negligible, like when we heard a couple years ago that Ryan Fernandez was really restrictive of making a move because of that Rule 5
Hmm.
status, when at the end of the day, it's a reliever who I was talking to somebody at work the other day, it's like, if you know who your relievers are on a daily basis, you're paying too much attention because it's getting to the point where we hear the Memphis shuttle, but every other team is gonna just be rolling through these guys, whoever's gonna be throwing 100 and whoever's healthy. Um, I mean, that's what we're going to see with the bullpen. So I don't think the Rule 5 status is really that prohibitive like they made it sound with Fernandez, or in the cash, like you're saying with Brule or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, and I made this argument. I think it might have been when we were talking with Bernie. Um, how bullpen usage just may be different this year, right? We're used to that churn. We're used to trying to get the best, squeeze every inch out of a bullpen like but the games aren't going to really matter that much, right? I mean, the development is going to be more important. And if that means you have a Pashard sitting on taking up a roster spot because you think that there's value in not only this year, but the future years, then you might just have to use your relievers a little differently or only have one or two spots that you can rotate through. But I'm wondering if there's just not going to be less reliever churn this year.
I'd be interested to see how they're planning to do that, because that's somebody like Chris Roycroft who just continuously gets thrown out there, and they want him to work, obviously, it seems like. But then you get further down, and this is where I'm interested to see how they use the bullpen usage when it comes to prospects. Like we were seeing Tink Hence, I already mentioned him and his velocity and everything. But it seems like now they're putting him on the reliever path while not completely closing the door on starting, but that's what it's looking like. Where somebody like Tink, like, let's get him up to the majors while he's healthy, as soon as he's healthy. And that's where the reliever churn I would like to see, of seeing those top prospect, not top prospects like Quinn Matthews or anything, but guys that are closer to the big leagues that we've heard, they're close, but they're just not ready. Well, then let's just bring them up to the major league level and actually see what they have and see if this pitching development is working. And then kind of start thinning the herd or figuring out what you can target, either in the draft or in free agency when you need to.
Yeah, I mean that feels like that's a real good approach that they probably will take throughout the year. Again, it may not be, Tinkins is probably not starting at the major league level, but if he goes to Memphis and has a good month or two, especially as a reliever, they very well may call him up because you never know. I mean, we assume Tinkins is healthy right now, even though he pitched today. We don't know, right? I mean, that just
Mhm.
seems to be the way of him. So you don't want him to waste all of that in Memphis if he can help the big league team or figure that out. Um, so yeah, I think that those kind of guys, again, maybe they're not starting the season in St. Louis, but I don't know that they will be as hesitant as they were the last couple of years in Mo's term about bringing guys up, maybe when they're not quite 100% ready.
Well, I'm gonna put this kind of in the bullpen usage, but send it back to you, and I get to host for 1 second. What do you think the value of a closer for this team is? Do you think it's somebody that they're gonna try to get out of Ryan Stanek and just have him flip, or is it something like Matt Svanson where they're gonna see, is he the closer of the future, when the reality is there might not be that many saves to go around?
I think I think that the closer role will probably not be a one man band this year. I mean, if it is, it's probably Jojo Romero, until he gets traded, which is always a good possibility.
Mhm.
But I would not be surprised if it's not Jojo on some nights, but they look for opportunities to see a Swanson, and then maybe they do look for if Senek is looking good because they want to build that value. They give him some opportunities there to show that he's able to handle that. I don't. One of the questions I did the Cardinal 6,
Mhm.
and then we did the season long one, and I've kind of got it about ready to get out. But one of the questions I put out there was, would any Cardinal have 20 saves this year? And I'm
Mm.
interested to see the results because I think that, one, you could look at it, they're not going to a whole lot of games, but on the second
Mhm.
side, it may be that there's a whole lot of people with 15 saves.
Sure. Yeah, and that's, one of my hot takes going into the season, was that Swanson would have 20 saves, and
Mhm.
then you see something like Fangraphs come out where it's like Riley O'Brien was the leader in the
Oh, yeah.
clubhouse, and but then whatever this calf injury is, I don't know if we've seen actually severity. I think he's supposed to throw today, but he's up there as somebody who I was also high on last year. But what value does he have? Is he just that guy that's going to be a closer? Is he a firefighter? How does that? Who fills the Leahy role? I think there's just a lot of questions in the bullpen that is probably just gonna be spread like you're saying. Everybody's gonna fill something and just see what clicks.
Yeah, and it may be that they go through spurts, right? I mean, that they're like, okay, they start the season with O'Brien in that 8th inning role for 2-3 weeks or something like that, and then maybe they move him to the 7th and let Swanson take the 8th if things are going well, and just kind of shifting things around. And that's the kind of thing that we'll get to see. It's hard, especially in the bullpen. You don't really look at any of those guys as a big part of your future, right? Unless it maybe is a flamethrower closer like the Rosendals of the past or anything like that. Because relievers are fungible, they change it all the time, whatever. But you do want to see that in other spots as well, how they start prioritizing some players. Will we see Nolan Gorman start to, if he starts off slow, does he get the full leash or does he, start shifting back and playing 3 times a week at third and see more Urias? I think those are the kind of usage patterns are going to be very interesting this year.
That's a great question that I was actually just thinking of is even though we're not expecting a playoff run, which I mean, I'm a fan, so I'm going to expect a playoff run regardless. Oliver Marmol is going to manage every game to win. So it's not like, the NFL tanking or NBA tanking where guys are just going to be out for rest reasons or whatever. Like Marmol is still going to be managing for his job. And I compared this rebuild to the White Sox in a good way. I had a White Sox reporter on Cardinals on my time, and I was comparing how the Cardinals rebuild and the White Sox rebuild, they're like in that same era where they were both needed. But the White Sox for the last 4 years have put out people that are not major league talent, where the Cardinals, and maybe it's just because we cover them so much, is that I feel that everybody on the major league roster is major league capable, to where you get somebody who I think in a competent manager and Oliver Marmol is. Sorry if that loses and gets people to tune out right now. I think he's going to manage in the way to put those people like Nolan Gorman in the best position to succeed. But at the end of the day, he's going to manage to win. And if Nolan Gorman ends up flaming out, which I really hope he does not, I'm part of the choo-choo train for Nolan Gorman. I think he deserves every bit of the leash that you were mentioning. But if it comes to wins and losses, I think that Oliver Marmol is still going to try to get the best out of his teams in the wins and loss column.
I think that's fair. I think that there's definitely, especially when the game starts, they're going to look for wins. They're not. This is not a let's lose 115 games so we can hopefully get really good lottery odds for next year. That's not what this team is. But I do wonder if this is going to be, how spring training games are about scripted, right? This guy's going to pitch, and then this guy's going to pitch after him, and this, he's got 2 innings, whatever the case may be. I wonder if we'll see a little bit more of that in the regular season of, okay, these are my 3 guys I'm going to use tonight. No matter what the situation is, these are my guys. I think it's going to be interesting for Marmol because he's going to be tempted, like every save situation, throw Jojo Romero, because that's maybe a 95% chance you're going to win if you throw him. But, you may have to throw a Swanson or a O'Brien or something, and maybe your odds are only 85%. But those guys, you need to see what you have in them. And if it takes, if it blows up, it blows up. So I guess, what I'm saying? I'm not saying that they're not trying to win, but I think they're going to be more structured about how they do things so they can find out information more than just win a ball game.
I think a script is a phenomenal way to put it that I hadn't really thought of, where, we're going to stick to the plan, and that's the plan. And that's how plans work. You stick to it so that you can actually get the feedback and adjust to sticking to whatever your plan was. Because as you start changing things, then you don't know where things went wrong. So by scripting it out, you can pinpoint where it is that maybe that shortcoming would be. And I think that's a very, very good way of putting it, is that they'll be scripted, but still trying to script it to get the most out of those guys, whether it's their bullpen usage or when do we go to a 6th man. Regardless, we're going to skip this person's start, even if he is, running through it just for that innings limit. I think that's a very good way to look at it. But I also think that Marmol might, I want to see how and if Bloom handcuffs Marmol, like we kind of saw where, I remember just being in the hospital with my wife giving birth to our 2nd child, and just seeing the same guys go out there and Marmol just literally being like, we don't have anybody coming. And it wasn't talking about the talent in the minor leagues. It was the fact that there was not a move that was going to be made. And I think that that won't be the same case this year. where I think Bloom trusts the on-field product to also want to win, where if Marmol wants somebody sent down or brought up, I think he's gonna have more say than maybe in years past.
Yeah, it very well may be. It's gonna be, I mean, because there was a lot of people that thought when Heimblum took over that Ollie Marmol was out the door, right?
Mhm,
And it made sense for them to keep him. I wonder, and we won't know, but it feels to me like maybe Marmol and Bloom might even be more on the same page than or than Mo and
mhm,
Ollie were. Even though I think they had a very good relationship, and I don't think there was any kind of friction there more than anything of field manager and GM, whatever. You're always going to have some, but Bloom's more his age. They're
mhm.
maybe be able to speak the same language. Ollie came up as a developmental type of guy, so I'm wondering if so if Ollie wants something, it's probably something that Heim's already thought of, that kind of thing.
Mhm, and that maybe they when you hear them talk, you hear them say kind of the same things in the same way, and maybe that's part of the script again, that they're just kind of in that route, just regardless, we're buying in. But I think the buy-in is legit from both sides for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and you did say something about him managing for his job. And you're not necessarily wrong. I'm a little bit surprised we haven't already gotten the Marmol extension, right?
Mhm,
Because it doesn't feel like it feels like if Heimblum wanted to get somebody else, he would have gotten somebody else. And there's not an expectation that this team wins 85, 90 games this year. I mean, I guess if they lost 55, I mean, or 155, and he lost the clubhouse and everything was
mhm,
just a whole dumpster fire, then they would fire him. But feels to me like it's going to be really hard not to see Ollie Marmol as the manager in 27 and 28. So why they haven't necessarily done that? It may, spring's still young, could still
mhm.
happen, but I'm a little bit surprised that hasn't been done already.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, he came up as a player development person, and what better person to be there in the player development phase of this roster, where being in Chicago, being through a couple rebuilds up here with the Sox and the Cubs, where both teams brought in Rick Renteria to literally just lead the cattle
Yeah.
to slaughter, and then once they got good, they got rid of them. Where I don't think that's somebody like Marmol is going to be able to like be that way. He's a player development, so he's going to be able to develop those guys, but then when you think about it in 27, 28, now those are the same guys that Marmol's been with for 5, 6 to 8 years.
Mhm.
Maybe now they wanna have that sense of consistency with those same guys that he's been with. So I think if all goes to what I think would be a good plan is if he ends up playing his way or managing his way into that next great Cardinal team as that voice.
Yeah, it's very, very possible, and especially because that manager role is so different nowadays. There's not that overwhelming personality of the Tony La Russas and the Tommy Lasordas and even the Mike Josas, and I mean
Mhm,
Craig Counsell may be the most obvious one of those, and that's just even he's not necessarily a more superb technician or something like that. He works well with his front office, and I think that's the case. Now it's if you're changing a manager, it's more of one just getting a fresh voice and a bit of fresh air, but also if somebody has gotten philosophical differences, if you will. And I just don't see that happening with Marmol. Now again, if they start losing games that they should win, especially in the next couple of years, then yeah, then they'll take another look at it. But I mean, right now, I don't see that there's anything really that Marmol is going to do that's going to be a fireable offense,
mhm.
without barring something, really scandalous or something of that nature.
Well, and there's also the lack of staff turnover where you see it's been Descalso and John Jay and, like, all the same voices. Does that say more towards Marmol's leadership? I think it does, or does it say that the Cardinals are afraid to get rid of people? I don't think that's the case, where I think that these guys want to be with Marmol and the clubhouse likes having them around, and it's not just, "Oh, look at these veteran Cardinals being around." These are legitimate coaches that are always part of something in the managerial cycle, and they're choosing, I believe, to stay in St. Louis even though they're continually having these options to go elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, if Daniel Descalso had gotten a job, he would have gone,
Right.
because I think he interviewed at a couple spots, or at least was rumored to have, talk about it. And whether he did or not, I don't know. But yeah, I think that the staff is good. always think back, you wouldn't guess who the longest serving person on the staff is, but it's Jamie Pogue, the bullpen catcher. He came the first year that Matheny was here. So
Mhm.
he's been here a long time. He and I he used to do the show first part of the year. We fell out of touch, um but yeah, I mean there was a time where the Cardinals were very much about consistency and not wanting to rock the boat, and everything got promoted from inside, internally and all that kind of stuff. But we've seen that the front office is definitely not that way anymore, bringing people in from all sorts of different organizations. And I think that would be the same with the coaching staff as well. If they needed a new hitting coach, if they needed something else, they'll go out and get. And if somebody's not doing the job, even though they're a long term Cardinal, they might find another place for them, because we
Mhm.
saw some rotations of jobs this winter. They might find another spot for Daniel Descalso or John Jay if they weren't what they thought at the major league level. But I don't think they'd have any qualms about letting them go either.
Well, and I think that speaks to the new regime, but I think it was Walton a couple weeks ago said that they have been announced to bringing in all these new player development pieces, but they're actually pieces that they got rid of and actually just ended up bringing
Yeah.
back. So it's still a step in the right direction for where they're supposed to go, but was that sense of consistency going too long to where they just kept doing the same thing over and over at the major league level that things got stale? And I think that's kind of why we're in this situation now.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that, and then a lot of, cutbacks in the minor leagues, which, I mean, again, like Walton said, they bring in the same positions back. They're not necessarily bringing the same people back, and that's,
Mhm.
that can be huge too, because just having those other eyes, other mindsets on these things. But the consistency is good too. I mean, we've seen Ryan Ludwig be a roving instructor for a number of years now.
Mhm.
Those kind of things can't hurt when you mix. I mean, you've got to have that mix, right?
Mhm.
You can't be completely stuck in everything that you've ever done, but you can't throw everything out and start from scratch all the time either.
Well, we've been asking for progress, and that's what they're giving us.
Mhm.
So it's are they listening or do they just know it's time? Either way, I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I think they finally, I mean, the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, if you couldn't see it after that, then,
Mhm.
you know, you're never going to. And I give a lot of credit, and, as Bernie was talking about it a couple weeks ago as well, give a lot of credit to the DeWitts for not only seeing that there was a problem, but figuring out a way to, get Heimblum in here to help fix it. That was a guy that, obviously had a lot of they had a lot of respect for, and when he came in and said, "You're gonna need to do 1, 2, 3, XYZ," they didn't really balk at it. It doesn't sound like it. Sounds like, okay, they hired him and they said, "Let's do it your way and let's see how it works."
Yeah, it's way different than what I get to see in here in Chicago with, Jerry Reinsdorf and the Sox and the
Mhm.
Bulls, where everything's done despite his best wishes, and now it's kind of forced to have to do things this different way. But again, it was just too late where, like you're saying, they realized it, and they did something about it, which whether we like the way that it happened or not, at least we're seeing something.
Right. I mean, it would have been great if they had seen it about 2 or 3 years
Mhm,
before that, to be able to get it while the Cardinals were still fairly competitive, being able to kind of not necessarily have to go through the lows of 23 and 25. But, sometimes you've gotta do that. And one, because that's the easiest way to, you know, cut ties with people, and in 25, hopefully the trade deadline, we'll see what the results are, but hopefully that will be helpful for this new era. Um, but that's just, otherwise you don't really know how bad it is until you see how bad it is.
well, that's exactly what it is. I was saying I'm excited for this season. I mean, I'm excited for every baseball season,
Right.
but even though the lines are set at 68, 69.5, I'm excited, and maybe it was just that consistency that got so boring, or we just have this blind optimism that we don't know how bad it can truly get because we just haven't seen it. But I also don't see that team actually being here, but until we start taking the lumps and seeing the true ups and downs and the dog days truly feeling like the dog days, I don't think we'll actually understand what a rebuild actually means.
Yeah. And I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about how the offense is going to struggle this year, and it very well may, but I still can't get past, if this is going to be a disappointing season, on the field.
Mhm.
It feels to me it's going to be because of that starting rotation. That's still. I mean, I know there's people coming up, and we'll see a lot more um, rotation in it than we did last year when it was all the same people. Nobody got
Mhm.
hurt or anything like that. But there's a lot of people to be excited about on this team, and for me, very few of them are going to be your starters on any given day.
Well, and if the pitching is overwhelming, you gotta think about where the current line is for our expectations,
Mhm.
where the kind of projections are nobody under an ERA of 4.
Right.
So even if they overperform that, what are we looking at? Another decent year from Sonny Gray type of something,
Mhm.
or, where, yeah, we're hearing Dustin May hit 99 in the bullpen, but even his overwhelming success may be a 3.5 ERA and 140 innings. So I agree that if that the team does struggle, it's going to be because we're starting to see a Rockies type rotation where we're seeing mid fours being the norm, and
Mhm.
then it's just getting painful to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, now and you mentioned Dustin May, and we did get good reports out of the bullpen. We haven't seen him in a game yet, so and then again, you take all of it with grains of salt.
Mhm.
But he got me thinking about this hypothetical that I'll throw in your lap. Assume maybe everything overachieves,
Mhm.
and we get to July, and the Cardinals are either in a wild card spot or right outside of it. Dustin May's had a great year. Um, Senek is doing well.
Mhm.
Ramon Urias is solid. Um, what does Heimblum do? Do you think Heimblum looks at the team and still, he famously said in his, first press conference, we will sacrifice short term gains for long term gains, basically.
Mhm.
Would he go ahead and trade a May and all those pieces and try to get something better and then let the chips fall where they may, or would he have feel like he needed to push in a little bit?
I was at the signing of Dustin May, I was hoping it was a 2-year deal for that flexibility that you're kind of referencing for the
Mhm.
potential of outcomes, where if he is on a 2-year deal and he's pitching well, great, then you keep him along and then he's stabilizing a rotation, you kind of know what you have. But if he's also pitching well, but the rest of the team is not doing well, then you have a little bit more of that cost certainty as well for what you can offer. But then also, again, if it's a 2-year deal, then you can just deal with it again next year. Where this 1 year with the mutual option, which never, it's a 1-year deal.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's
Um,
one year deal.
there's no reason, I think, regardless, um, for what he can do to stick around. If he's
Mhm.
pitching so well that the Cardinals are in it, what does that even mean for the NL Central to be in it when you're talking about the playoff
Right.
push? To where you might see what the Brewers are doing, where you take a quality major leaguer and flip them into a quality major leaguer and something else for the depth. That could be something that Dustin May, if everything is that overwhelming, that he could turn into, because the chances are, even if they try to go all in, this team going all in doesn't have the chance to win the World Series. So Dustin May, Dustin May having a phenomenal year is just more value to what you're going to get in a trade.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely probably what Bloom would do. I do think though, and this goes back not only to this part of the discussion, but back to what we were talking about earlier about trying to win every day. There are psychological impacts that the Cardinals are going to have to take into effect as well. I mean, again, I think there are going to be times where Ollie Marmol might, if even if we're talking about script, might have to throw out the script and try to win that game
Mm.
because the Cardinals have come back from 5 runs down, and this is a huge thing. If they can win this game, it's really a good thing for these people, for these players to see that they can do it and all that kind of stuff. Um, I would think that's going to be an interesting part of the season as well. Is how do they find ways to get these guys developed mentally as well as physically, not only in the mental aspect of playing baseball, but in the mental aspect of being in a, you know, being on a winning team type of thing.
And that type of management style, not only the player's psyche, but also to get the fans still committed to it, because nothing worse going down 4 early, and then like we saw in 24, 25, that they just kind of threw in the towel, and then you just saw, defensive replacements and guys getting pulled out in the 5th or 6th inning,
Mhm.
where I don't think that's gonna if like you're talking about where they've been on a bad run and this big comeback has happened, they're going to try to win that, and that's what the fans wanna see too, because, again, nothing worse than tuning in, the game's over in the 5th inning, well, then I'm gonna go switch over to Survivor or
Mhm.
whatever is going on.
Yeah, and you're right. I think that we have talked about, oh, they took out over the last few years. Arenado came out in the 5th or 6th, or Goldschmidt or somebody else. And I mean, granted, there are people, maybe even Lars Newbar when he comes back, that you want to get off their feet if a game's blown out. But I think that one of the advantages of such a young team is no matter what the score is, they can get valuable at bats. They're not people that you need to necessarily rest.
Mhm,
They're guys that it's like, okay, you go up there and it's 8-1, but pretend it's 1-0.
mhm.
Get on base, or hey, this guy's over. Let's get this run in. Let's make it 8-2. I mean, there's value in those kind of things, and that's one of the good things about not necessarily expecting much out of a season is these guys can go and learn at the highest level what it takes to be successful.
And that's also we've talked about them needing a veteran presence, but maybe a veteran presence isn't needed when the entire team is the same age with the same goal, and we've heard them kind of all talking about it to where they're not gonna give up regardless because they're all having the same passion, like, the same
Mhm.
projected career path, that they don't need somebody to tell them that this is how it's done. Marmol's been there for however many years now. They've got the other guys that we just talked about on the staff that have been there, in the major leagues that could teach him that, where they don't need to waste the roster spot on a Taylor Motter or a Brandon Crawford.
Mhm.
They got to go ahead and have Burley be the veteran voice, but also be a quality major league player at the age of 28, and let the veteran leadership come from the coaching staff kind of like it should.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this over last winter or the winter before, whenever the leadership was such a big thing. Um, and it's different coming, and you would probably know this better than anybody, right? That it's different when the coach sets the tone. I mean, that you
Mhm.
want a good coach, you want somebody that's setting a good tone, but you need those players to lean on because it's a different relationship than it is with your boss, right?
Mhm. 100%. I mean, one place where I saw my manager giving one of our pitchers $5 an extra $5 per diem to shave his eyebrows, that one shows to the the life on the road of indie ball, but that team was so successful, and it's not because it was the cool manager or anything, it was just that he knew that we were on a losing streak at that time, and that got it done to where he could read the room, but you go to see him in the field next day, and it's not just like, "Oh, hey, remember that party last night?" Like, when he's at the field, it's time to get down to business.
Right.
But, we're the ones doing it every day that we are in turn playing for the ones next to us, and the manager's this one that fills out the lineup card. But you also have to respect that as well. And if you don't have that respect in the locker room, then sure, maybe that leadership is a problem, but I think Marmol's young enough and connected enough with the support enough that, there's going to be I can't see there being this huge tension in the locker room between the players and the management.
No, no, I don't think so either. And I mean, we saw even that year, they went out and signed a whole lot of, old pitchers and all that kind of stuff, and people that they, felt like the Brandon Crawfords needed to be the veteran leadership. But then you would still get the stories about Brendan Donovan being the guy that was, texting
Mhm,
everybody and doing stuff. And we're getting some of that now, even with JJ Weatherholt, right? I mean, he
mhm.
hasn't even played a game yet, and he's still, connecting with his teammates and things like that. And whether he will be, a leader first day out or what, I don't, who knows? But I think that you have to be open to the fact that, yeah, leadership can come organically. It doesn't have to just come with experience. It can come with just the right personalities in the right spot.
Well, I'll actually take it and put it toward the other side where I think the clubhouse and the lineup, the leadership is gonna just happen. I mean, the offense is gonna go ups and downs regardless, but I'll kind of, again, play host for a second. Do you think the pitching staff needs a leader? And if so, who is it gonna be? Is it McGreevy because he is the voice of the union as well? Or is it just, again, we're gonna see a cycle, so whoever is there that day is leading? What do you think?
I think that I think I think Matthew Liebertor's probably your best shot at
Mhm.
some sort of leadership. I mean, he's probably gonna be the opening day starter. He seems to have a serious mindset about that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and really trying to take on a bit of that role of, encouraging people to, the whole following in the Carpenter Wainwright, um, line of starters, of leaders and things of that Sonny Gray as well. Um, you know, whether he won't necessarily have the best year, but I could see him taking on that. And he's a guy that in theory should be here for a while, right? I mean, he's
Mhm.
not the Dustin May who has experience, but like you said, odds of him being here past July are really slim. And some of these other guys that don't have as much of experience as he does. So if there's going to be a leader in that rotation, I think it's Libertor, but I also don't know how much leadership gets dinged to some degree when you struggle. I mean, and I know I've heard stories like that where, if how can you be the leader when you're posting a 5 ERA and you're getting shelled to do what I don't do what I do, that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that he will be, but there's that risk of, especially with a young guy, it's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's not working for you. So why would it work for me?
Mhm. Well, and we heard the pitching just to go to your last point, we heard the pitching staff last year talk about how good it was to work with Pedro Pages, but that pitching staff was Sonny Gray, Eric Fedde, and, Miles Michaelis, so is that
Mhm.
really the what you wanna be taking to your grave with that? But I do think there is a benefit in having definitely pitching-wise, somebody who's been there before so that you can learn about the routine and things that you can like you said, this may work for you, but having people that have been there before that can suggest different things is going to be beneficial. And that's something that I struggled with going into pro ball. Like I didn't know anybody and I
Mhm.
don't really have an outgoing personality to where I'm also going to ask for something to where maybe that's where something that this team is going to struggle with when we talk about the leadership is just not knowing the daily routine
Mm.
of a major league season. And that's something that they'll just have to learn on the go. Especially on the pitching side, where maybe again it's Libertor, but he's in his second season after breaking down for a year, and then it's Palante who came off a miserable second half. McGreevy had to go up and down so many times. May's coming off of who knows what. Leahy is doing this back and forth that there really is no consistent person that can show those between start routines or things like that, that they just might have to do that, trust the player development or just see what works.
Yeah, and I mean, and it could be even just, hey, the routines, or this is how you're a big leaguer. This is how this works.
Mhm,
There are people. I mean, and that's the thing about this team, both hitting and pitching. There are a lot of younger players on the team, but there's players that have been here for a while, right? I mean, Gorman's been here for 4 or 5 years. Walker's at 3 or 4.
mhm,
Victor Scott's at his probably this is about his third. I mean, even there's not just like a whole slew of guys that don't have any major league experience. It's just kind of the kind of thing you would think of when you're talking about this youth movement. It's a young team, but it's got some experience, and hopefully that helps. We'll see. How they develop and all that kind of stuff. But they may have a better idea of this is what I need to do to get ready for a game.
mhm, and that experience is, again, what I pointed to earlier, is that these guys deserve to be at the major league level taking
Mhm.
a major league paycheck where they have the experience to prove that. Everybody is down on Nolan Gorman because he's, quote, "had 1,500 plate appearances," but I got something coming out, I think on Sunday that's saying, like, yes, he's had 1,500 plate appearances, but one was a rookie season where he had however many at bats. The other one was where he switched to second base full time for the first time. Then the next was where he went between second and third. Then the next was where he had Nolan Arenado, who stuck around when he wasn't supposed to. So, yes, he has the experience, but he hasn't had the opportunity that I think he deserves. So, like you're saying, there's guys that have been there that can help. But I'm also excited to watch these guys who deserve to be up here kind of really get that unencumbered look to make a run towards a good major league career.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like too, right? I mean, unencumbered looks, how long do they last? I mean, again, does 2 months, if Gorman's struggling after 2 months, does that mean they decide, okay, it's time to pull the plug? Whereas if JJ Weatherholt's struggling after two
Mhm.
months, they're able to just say, well, we're just going to play through it. same thing with Jordan Walker. Does he get a little bit more time, or is it the fact that, hey, this is year 4, and if you're not getting it done, then you're not getting it done. Especially if it's looking like the same results as we've seen the last couple of years. I think that's going to be very interesting because I don't, like you said, and we've talked about, it's not a let's see how bad we can be.
Hmm.
This is supposed to be, getting people better, and if a player's not getting better, um, not that there's a whole lot of people at third base and right field that can necessarily fill in, but they can find somebody that can do that if they feel like that these guys just aren't. It's not ever going to come together.
Well, I think the shortest leash or quickest hook, to put it that way, where I think Gorman, like you're saying, there's nobody behind him that's really pushing him. Where I think left field is going to end up being the shortest leash of just seeing who's healthy currently and who is hot currently. I don't think there's in any world that we can rely on Lars Nootbaar to be out there opening day. So maybe it's going to be Nathan Church, who I'm pretty high on, honestly, with Nathan Church. That why not give him especially if you're going to stay with that lefty look. He's a great fielder. That let's go ahead and throw him out there. Hope for maybe a Jeremy Hazelbaker type run, and then let's see how long that lasts. Then if it starts to sizzle or fizzle out, then you get the Thomas JC out there in left field or the Fermin out in left field or whatever it's going to take. But I think left field is probably going to where you're starting to see that actual cycle of the major league players where I think the third base leash with Nolan Gorman is a little bit longer than that.
Yeah, I mean you're probably right. I mean Urus being in there does throw a little bit of a wrinkle in Gorman, but
Mhm,
that's not a we need to see somebody that a new prospect or something like that. It's just that would be just he's not cutting it. We're going to play him and Urias, and we'll see who plays third base next year
mhm,
later. But yeah, I think they're trying. I think the only a very interesting question though also could be if Joshua Baez goes to Memphis and
mhm,
hits like he did last year, and Jordan Walker struggles. When does that kind of a switch happen, or does it happen, or does Baez take that left field spot instead?
mhm,
I think that might be the most interesting thing. And now, again, that's a lot of ifs, right? He
mhm.
has to redo, take what he learned this year and apply it. But that could be a very interesting thing to watch this year.
Well, as much as I think that Nathan Church and Baez are those potential, I don't want to say overlooked pieces, but I also think there's the Brian Torres of it all,
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think anybody ever mentions, and I forget he's on the roster at times for sure. But I mean, he put together a heck of a season last year, got added to the major league roster, so he's there. He's played. He's got that utility, like that he can play everywhere that it is, whatever you need him to be. Does he fit into that plan as well, or is he just going to be a cycle for left field, right field? Is he going to push Urias for a role, or what's it going to be?
Yeah, I think that I had him on my roster the first one I did, and then I took him off the next time, and then now, I think it's interesting, but I also think there's a roster crunch that I just don't see, especially with a guy that hasn't made a major league debut yet, that has plenty of options left.
Hmm.
Um, I think that I think he'd have to have a really, and again, it's spring, right? I mean, that's probably the problem of Walker and Scott and some of the others. They really enjoyed their springs, and so they brought them forward when spring
Hmm.
means absolutely nothing. And so,
But JJ Weatherholt hit a 420-foot home run, so it
well, I
means
mean,
a
now,
lot
I mean,
today.
spring means everything when you look at it that way. Um, I saw that was JJ's first hit. I had this feeling of I don't know if you ever saw the movie Maverick, where
Hmm.
Maverick goes and he tells them that everybody's going to watch it. Let him, he's going to play poker and he's going to give him an hour, and he's not going to win for an hour, and then after the hour's up, he goes and cleans up because he's been watching all of them and tells. I feel like that's Weatherhold. He just kind of is like, okay, I'm going to play a week and see what everything is, and now I know what's going on. Here we go. Weatherhold.
Yeah, my friends will put it as Scott's gonna start trying now. That's when I'm losing in something, and then usually golf. I'm a back nine player, but they like to say, "Oh, he's starting to try now." That's what Weatherholt did. He did it. He got his timing down. He did that whole thing. He took his walks. Now let's go ahead and start popping home runs over center field against
Yeah.
Devin Williams.
Yeah, no, yeah, we can draw so many conclusions from that. None of them accurate, but that doesn't stop us from drawing them anyway. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's even if Torres had a great spring, I think it would be very difficult for him to do that just because of the way that the thing is rusted. Now he's on the 40 man, so
Hmm.
if it is a situation where somebody gets hurt later on, or somebody gets hurt before the end of spring training, especially when Newt Bar is still not ready to go, then
Hmm.
then maybe he has an opportunity to get through there. But um, I think that he had an opportunity when he was added in the winter, and things have conspired against him to
Hmm.
make it a little bit more difficult for him to make it right now.
Hmm. And that's where I think that the catching situation, whatever the heck that's going to be, is also going to have that
Hmm.
down 26 man, or I guess 13-man bench, 4-man bench role, where maybe that somebody like that could have had that spot, but then with the question marks around Herrera, whoever is going to be catching Pajes, Crooks, I mean, Pozo, whatever role that's going to be, I think that's just a roster spot that's now just not available because of the Herrera question.
Yeah, what's your bench right now? Pajes, Pozo, Urias, and said JC or Fermin.
Mhm, right.
That's
And
maybe.
then that's with Pajes catching, so then is Pozo your backup catcher and Herrera DHing? Like, that just opens up so many
Mhm.
more questions, but Herrera is supposed to be behind the plate on Sunday, and feel free to jump on over to Cardinals on my time. I need Herrera to catch.
Yes, check that out. I think you I remember seeing something on Twitter about that being a need for you, and I think that's what the Cardinals want. And I think that if I think the fact that he's not playing for Panama helps,
Mhm,
and he gets a chance to play in camp all the time, and Sunday will be a big deal. But I think the Cardinals would rather him catch, and if he catches, Paul Hayes is your backup, but they may keep Pozo as a
mhm.
backup first baseman, catcher, emergency catcher type of thing.
There's your righty bat.
Yeah, and it very well may be because, I've thought maybe that they would go with, Velasquez, but,
Mhm,
again, you're already gonna have to add Weatherholt to the 40 man.
mhm,
If Velasquez would have to be another addition to the 40 man.
mhm.
Packy Naughton is out there at the bullpen that, there's been a lot of talk about him. If he comes up, he's gotta be added to the 40 man. You start trying to figure out, not that there's not dead weight around here and there that you could probably cut, but it feels like the Cardinals have done a pretty good job of, having interesting people on this 40 man that would be not that they wouldn't go through waivers and stay in the organization, but they may not.
I think it was Walton again who brought up the 40-man stuff, but I was under the impression of, "Why aren't they using these 60-day IL spots?"
Mhm,
But
mhm.
he again pointed to the Major League Service, but that's where I'm okay with, especially pitchers. I'm okay with it because how long are you gonna get out of these guys that are coming off of major injuries as well? With the TK Roby and the Cooper Jerpy, like, they've had arms injuries already, so let's go ahead, fine, start the major league clock. Hopefully, they're back in a few months, and then you can worry about it then. But then also, hopefully, they're ready to where you can put them in the major league bullpen and get something out of them while they are healthy, and then you can figure out the service time issue later.
I mean, yeah, that's a reasonable thought of it. You know, I mean, it is been a history of the Cardinals, and I think it may change some, but that path of least resistance is a big thing. And to be fair, in an organization that has had significant revenue decreases, paying a minor league salary versus a
Mhm.
major league salary all year long, especially for a guy that's not going to play, or at least not going to play for a significant portion of it. It's not like I said, it's not going to make or break them, but it could be noticeable.
And that's also the question for, well, I don't wanna say why they got added to the 40 man, but was there really that much of a risk for somebody to claim Cooper Jerpy or, the other guys that needed to get added to the 40 man to where now you're hesitant to that major league salary? Those are things that, like you've said before,
Hmm.
we'll just never know.
Yeah.
But it's just something, the inner workings that is just so different from what we would do in a fantasy baseball league compared to what actually happens. Crazy to think in
True.
a different
True.
world.
Well, and again, if somebody claimed a Jerpy, of course, that is actually ideal for them because then
Mhm,
they could put him on the major league 60-day injured list because he's got to be in the majors anyway, but he's not
mhm,
taking up a spot. So yeah, I imagine he would have probably. We saw Cade Wincrest go this year. I
mhm.
imagine Derby would have, but yeah, you're right. There's some of these decisions were made, a year or two or so ago under Mo's company, and I'm sure Heimblum had some input, but would they have had the same decisions that he would have made if he had full control? That again, we won't know. Coming about the end of an hour, but I think we have to address the raging controversy of the week.
Oh boy.
The Cardinals put out their Hall of Fame ballot.
Oh boy. I thought you were going to say that we have seen one Cardinals TV broadcast.
No, I can't. Again, I don't fault them too much for that, just because they're still trying to figure this out, right? I mean, 2 months ago they didn't even. A month ago they didn't even have a TV provider. So I can understand, one, why they do that, two, why they cut back on some of that because of cost and things of that nature. It is
Then
a
just
little
give
bit.
us access to the live stream.
That is fair. I mean, it is a little bit surprising that they don't just try to stream something, even if it's not announcers, even if it's just the game. I think a lot of people would enjoy that, except for the fact you have. I watched Sunday's game against the Astros, but I was doing other things and kind of keep an eye on it. But it was like, half these guys don't have their name on their jersey, and I have no idea who they are. So without some announcers, I mean, could have been a problem. But still, yeah, I mean, there is something to that. I don't, why can't you do something? Put that over a radio feed, because I think a lot of those games are being still called on the radio, something like that. But it's also surprising, the Cardinals are going a week now without a broadcast, but that's not all them, right? I mean, that's the other teams that they're playing aren't broadcasting either, because we could have watched them. So I just don't know that spring training is really a profitable thing for TV.
Oh, absolutely not. But I'm just selfish and want it.
Well, sure. Oh, and we came in from, I guess it was probably 18 or 19. It had to be before COVID, I'm sure, but of the year that between what the Cardinals broadcast and what the other teams broadcast, there was like 4 spring training games that you didn't get to watch. I mean, 4 or 5. I mean, it's almost all of them were broadcasting. That really felt like the wave of the future, to now going down to, 8, I think, on our broadcast, and I don't know how many from other teams. Yeah, it's a shame. You're right. I mean, it is definitely. Now, for me, it doesn't matter as much, because those 1:00 games, I'm not, I'm not going to be able to watch them at work anyway, so it's not a huge thing. But I get it. I think we would all like to see more of this team before it gets to North.
Sorry to distract from the actual
it's
controversy.
That was a very important part to be made as well, so I can't argue with that. But Cardinals put out their ballot this week. Albert Pujols, Yadier Molina, Brian Jordan, George Hendrick. Jordan and Hendrick are carries over. Obviously, Albert and Yadi first time out there. It does seem like the Cardinals have not been specific about just one winning like they have in the past. It does feel like it would be very surprising and basically impossible for Yadi and Albert not to both go in this year. But if you have to pick just one to go into the Cardinal Hall of Fame this season, who is it?
Well, I'm going to say that the Cardinals official statement did say player with a quote parentheses S. So, but
well, on the website, the actual press release doesn't say anything about anything.
Oh, well, shocker. Okay, if I had to choose, you just have to go, because he was there the whole time. You have to go with Yadi. He was the face, even when Pujols was doing his crazy MVP run and Hall of Fame run. Yadi was still the guy that everybody kind of, I don't want to say related to, because he didn't relate to him, but that they found as the energy and the face of the team. He had the baby faced Yadi, then you get the neck tattoos Yadi. I mean, we grew up with him too. And then just being with the franchise forever, I think he just has to be, if there truly is one, I think Yadi has to go in the first. And maybe that's why Wainwright prolonged his career one more year, so he didn't have to fight these two for his red jacket.
I think, and somebody else pointed out on Twitter, the Cardinals should tweak their own rules and let Wainwright come in with these two as well. They all walked off the field together, and then at one point let them walk into Ballpark Village, I guess. Together.
And that was, I mean, I'm gonna kind of age myself, but also age maybe others. is that was like, oh man, that's my era of Cardinals baseball kind of coming to an end right there. But I also want to relate it to I got to see some 41 in a 100-person reunion farewell tour, and I'm like, holy crap, they're playing in a 100-person venue. And again, this band name probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it's just something that I'm like, man, I'm seeing these guys say goodbye, and these are musicians that can just keep
Mhm.
saying farewell tour after farewell tour. Like, this is the coming just right after I watch Pujols and Molina and Wainwright walk off the field. I can't handle this. I'm officially too old. Now I got
Sure.
these 2 daughters too. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It was a meaningful time, and so yeah, I agree with you that if you had to pick between Yachty and Albert, you have to go with Yachty because of the fact that it's a Cardinals Hall of Fame. Now, if you're looking at Cooperstown, no,
Mhm,
it's not a question. You go Albert Pujols, but
mhm,
for a Cardinals Hall of Fame for a guy that you're right, it was there the whole time. Albert did some amazing things in St. Louis, and obviously should be in the Cardinal Hall of Fame. There's no, we're not arguing that, but
mhm.
um, if you had to pick between the one of those two, now your question, your real cock kicker would be if you had to choose between Yachty and Adam Wainwright.
Me, I'm Wainwright always.
Mhm.
He helped me model. I mean, I don't say he helped me because I've never spoken to the man, but that's where I modeled my game after. The intensity, the drive, the way he set up pitchers, moved on the mound, working backwards. I mean, that's all the stuff that I learned from him. I was down there in St. Louis hoping to see him get his last at bat, but I had to settle for him playing a concert in center field instead. Again, that's just something my brother got me a signed Wayno picture. I mean, that's just something that emotionally me 100%. It's going
Yeah.
Wainwright because of just the impact he had on my career that he may never know about, but just me emotionally 100% Wainwright.
Yeah, I mean, I mean Wainwright's given person. If it was personal preference, yes, I would take Wainwright. Love Yachty, but Wainwright is Wainwright. Um, but if I was having to vote for the Hall of Fame between, and I'm glad this is all one of those barroom debates that you don't actually have to have any importance to. But I mean, I don't know. I might have to go with Yachty just because of what have longevity,
Mhm.
um, of the importance that he was. I mean, you could argue, I don't know that I would, but you could argue that Adam Wainwright wouldn't have been completely Adam Wainwright without
Sure.
him throwing to Yachty or Molina.
Mhm.
We talk about how much he controlled the running game to the point that it was basically non-existent against the Cardinals. Um, and Wainwright lost. He missed 2011.
Mhm.
Missed most of 20. Was it 14, 13? I can't remember.
14, I believe.
14, I think, because 15 he was pitching. That was the 100
Mhm.
win year. I think it was 14 was the year that he tore his Achilles and then came back and was a closer and all that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
somebody out there will correct me, surely, because I'm surely wrong. But I think that if I was picking between those two, just what they meant to the Cardinals, man. I mean, again, it's almost impossible, but I
Mhm.
think I might go with Yachty, even though I'd really like to go with Wainwright.
Okay, you're always entitled to your wrong opinion, but it's fine.
Well, that's why I have a show. So
And I've got a wife that lets me know that too, so
all right. Well, last question is the same one I've been asking everybody all season long. All the guests have been giving me this answer, so you probably know what's coming. But if there is just one player this year that you're watching, whether it's major league minors, whatever, if you're just watching them because of the storyline, if you're just watching them
Mhm.
because you're a fan, whatever the reason, if there's just one player you're picking out, who is it?
I've been saying Ivan Herrera, but I'm gonna go switch and say I've been going back and forth, and now I'm gonna do flip of the coin, and I'm gonna go with Blaze Jordan.
Hmm.
Um, I I don't know why. I just really think that there's still something there. The fact that he's 24, the fact that he can hit the absolute living everything out of the ball. The trade to Memphis obviously didn't end up looking very good on his final stat line, but he hit everywhere at every level. He can hit the ball hard. There's not much in first base territory for the Cardinals coming up as well, that I just wanna see what he can do with this consistent season of being. I can think he's gonna have to be the AAA Memphis starting first baseman
Hmm.
every day, that could only be maybe now we can get a look of what Luke and Baker could have been 5 years before they actually ended up giving Luke and Baker. Now, is that a bad comparison? Maybe, but, for a team that's gonna be sorely lacking anything in the power categories this year. Let's see if Blaze Jordan can pop into something.
That's an interesting choice. And yeah, it's a good one to pick. I think it's also be interesting. You're right. He probably will play every day at first in Memphis, but there was some discussion of Bernal picking up a glove here and there. So will they, especially if Crooks and Bernal are the catchers at Memphis, are they going to let one of them play first sometimes? And obviously not much of the time, but to keep them from just sitting on the bench. I don't know. But Jordan is a good one. And obviously, Heimblum's big fan of him, getting him again after getting him in Boston. So look forward to seeing how that pans out. So interesting pick. I like it.
Interesting usually doesn't mean good things, but I'm going to say it was in a good way.
Yeah, we'll go with that. No. No, I think it is good. I think it's very interesting. And I mean, again, there's, it's whoever you want to watch, right? I mean, there's so many storylines for everywhere, that are, some are going to be more overwhelming than others, but I think that could be a big one to watch as well. All right. Well, we will wrap it up for this week. Next week, Dane Perry will join me. But until then, for Scott, I'm Daniel. Good night.
The final time, Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina in regular season play. Here it comes. All of them coming out. 3 icons in franchise history, spanning over 2 decades. Excellence here with St. Louis, as Adam said to Yadi and Albert, you guys go first.